Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to be taking a look at a very weird update that happened to Yuzu Emulator. As you can see in the top of my window, I'm using Yuzu Canary version 18.19. This update is slightly broken, but in a way it's slightly awesome, and you're going to see why in my performance numbers in just a second. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you, and this isn't faked gameplay footage. I am indeed running at well over 100 frames per second in Cap Kingdom. Now, this performance isn't just area or camera location specific either. When I run around Cap Kingdom, you can see I'm running at 89 and 96 frames per second, where I was previously running at 50 to 55. And when I come into this main hub area where previously I was getting around 50 when recording, I'm now getting between 70 and 89 frames per second. It's kind of unbelievable, the performance that you're actually able to get in this Yuzu Canary version. So later on in this video, I'm also going to be showing you the brand new disc-based shader cache that everyone has been asking about and wanting for Yuzu Emulator for a very long time. But for now, I'm just going to quickly be taking a look at how much ridiculous levels of performance I'm able to get, and you should indeed be able to get if you use this Yuzu Canary version 18.19. So the reason we're getting this crazy performance is because of a brand new update to the asynchronous GPU emulation, which was added by Bunny, one of the main developers of Yuzu Emulator. What this asynchronous GPU emulation does is basically gives Yuzu semi-multi-core performance due to the fact that all the GPU operations will now take place on a separate core, whereas previously they would have all taken place, both CPU and GPU operations, on the same core or thread inside your own system. Unfortunately, in the very first implementation of this in, I believe, Canary 18.14 I think it was, there was a bug in that release in relation to cache management that meant that cache management was very expensive on frame rates and frame times, and in this subsequent build 18.19 he fixed that cache management issue, but unfortunately broke the dynamic scaling of resolution in game. Now, this dynamic resolution scaling is only really affected, at least in my testing, in Super Mario Odyssey. In pretty much every other game, so games like Splatoon, Bayonetta 2, Breath of the Wild, they have all seen absolutely huge performance jumps, just like we're seeing here in Super Mario Odyssey, but since they do not have dynamic resolution scaling built into their game's engine, they are not affected graphically like Super Mario Odyssey is. So apparently, according to some of the more GPU-minded developers over at Yuzu, this is only a bug, and once the dynamic resolution issue is fixed, we should have this exact same level of performance, and it is an absolutely amazing level of performance. For anybody who saw my video, I think it was 3 days ago, in which we got another really big performance improvement in Yuzu. That was Canary version 18.16 or 18.14, I believe, the original asynchronous GPU emulation update. Performance was nowhere near this, to be honest. In this area, I was only able to get about 60 or 62 frames per second, whereas now I'm, as I said, always going to be locked to 60 frames per second when you bear in mind the fact that when I'm recording gameplay footage, my frame rate generally drops by around 8 to 11 or 12 frames per second. By far the most demanding area in Sand Kingdom, and one of the most demanding areas in the game, in fact, is right here in the Sand Kingdom ruins, where previously you would have seen that I was only able to get around 51 frames per second, whereas I am very easily almost able to maintain a 60 frames per second lock once I have gone through all of my shader cache compilation. And shader compilation is something we're not going to have to worry about too much in the future of Yuzu Emulator, as we're about to take a look at. They have added a new PR, or a new update for Yuzu Emulator, that is hoping to fully implement a disk-based or loadable shader cache, so that you're not going to have to worry about any of these stutters or stuttery gameplay ever again. Let's quickly jump across to my desktop, where I'm going to show you guys the very first implementation of shader caches for Yuzu Emulator and exactly how they function and how they work. Okay, so this is my disk cache build of Yuzu Emulator. At this point in time at least, it's not ready for Canary merge, but if you come to Emulation, then you come to Configure and come to your Graphics tab, you're going to see, or you should see, that it will have something similar to Use Disk-Based Shader Cache. This may be called something different in future, but for now, this is how it is currently implemented. So once you have that selected, when you open your App Data Roaming Yuzu folder, you should see that you have this brand new folder titled Shader. You guys should be familiar with this folder because it's the exact same place that you put your keys file for using all of your games, and when you open this shader folder, open the OpenGL folder, you're going to see something that's very similar to how shader caches work on a CMU emulator. This is because Exap, one of the developers of CMU emulator, also helped with the development of this shader cache implement. So once you load your game, I'm just going to load Super Mario Odyssey for the very first time, you are going to see that all of this information is going to start popping up in your command window. For now at least, you're going to be ignoring that. So as you can see, once I got into gameplay, my disk-based shader cache in this transferable folder has already started to build based on all of the different shader information I have already seen in gameplay. So shaders can literally be gathered from anything. You can get shaders from just navigating menus, clicking buttons. For example, if I come to this option menu and come to language settings, you saw I got a few extra shaders from that. But for now, I'm going to just click the resume button and I'm going to load into gameplay, where I should be in Cap Kingdom, I believe. And there we go, we are indeed in Cap Kingdom. So for this disk-based shader cache build, I want to make you guys aware of the fact that all of the performance stuff that I showed in the previous version is not implemented in this build. I just put this build together from my own local repo so that I could show you guys exactly how this new shader cache is going to work and exactly what a shader cache does in game. So pretty much when you perform any action, like you can see me doing a ground pound, you can see in my folder in the bottom right hand corner that it is getting larger and larger in file size, meaning that this disk shader cache is indeed building. So for pretty much everything you do in game, so I'm just going to do a ground pound into the water, even though I already did a ground pound on land, when you do one in water it gives you more and more shaders, and in a very similar circumstance when you roll into something, or if you perform, let's say if I perform a capture on this frog, it's also going to give me even more shaders. You can see that my shader file is almost 2000 kilobytes already, and as I said, as you perform more and more actions and as you visit more and more kingdoms, your shader cache is going to grow even higher until it gets to a point of full completion. At this point in time, a full shader cache should be around 24,000 kilobytes, but that number is bound to change in future. Okay, so for now I'm going to click Emulation and I'm going to click Stop, and I'm going to reopen this folder and show you exactly what's going to happen when Yuzu is building its pre-compiled shader cache. Basically what happens is, while you play your game, it is going to build a transferable cache, and then the next time you load your game, it is going to build and then use your pre-compiled shader cache. So for example, when I load Super Mario Odyssey, you can see right here it's building my shaders in the command window, and you can also see in this pre-compiled folder that it is building a much larger pre-compiled shader cache. It is this pre-compiled shader cache that is going to be loaded by Yuzu, and this pre-compiled shader cache is what's going to make your game completely stutter-free upon loading it for a second, third, or indeed upon loading it for the 1000th time, hopefully. So as you can see there, I am not getting any kind of cache lag when I load into my menu like I previously did, and I also shouldn't get any shader related lag once I load into gameplay. Now for pretty much everyone in Yuzu Emulator and Super Mario Odyssey, and pretty much every game to be honest, once you load into a level for the very first time, you are going to get surface flush lag, which is basically the emulator loading all of the assets into the game, or I believe that's what it's doing anyway. But as you can very clearly see, I am no longer getting a shader cache compilation stutter when I perform any of these actions which I had previously performed. You can also see that if I do get any more shaders, it should appear in my OpenGL transferable cache right right here. I'm just going to run around and I'm going to, I think there's one more shader I need to get from a water interaction, so I think I need to do a ground pound again. And yep, you can see that my shader cache slightly grew once again, and when I do this ground pound to the very bottom surface of this water area, I am not going to get any more shader compilation, very similarly to when I perform a capture for the very first time again. So hopefully once all of these weird resolution issues and once shader caches are ready to be fully merged into a Yuzu Canary, everyone is going to have an absolutely awesome time, not only in Super Mario Odyssey, but also in many games that currently suffer from issues in relation to shader cache compilation stutter. I know for a fact that ARMS, another Nintendo Switch exclusive, when using this shader cache build, is now basically fully playable due to the fact that when not using a shader cache, it suffers very much so from compilation stutter, and in a very similar circumstance, games like Splatoon 2 and pretty much any 3D game you could mention now has absolutely no issues when using this build. It really is a very exciting time, not only for Switch emulation but emulation in general, and I am just super excited to see what these awesome developers of this awesome Nintendo Switch emulator are going to give to us in the coming year. So guys, if you want to help with the development of Yuzu Emulator, please head on over to their Patreon and pledge to support them. It is actually criminal how low the support for them currently is on their Patreon, and these guys definitely deserve so much, especially with everything we've seen in the last year of development. You'll find a link for this Patreon down in the description of this video. Please head on over there and pledge your support. As always guys, the best place to stay up to date on all of your favorite emulators is right here at BSoD Gaming. So once again, cheers for checking out this video. Remember to like it if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and as always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see all future videos from me.